Hey everybody, welcome to this very special issue of Staffing Monthly, where I have the distinct pleasure of not only hearing from a couple of people that I really know, like, trust, and enjoy being around, but we get to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's actually how to sell staffing services. And I actually had to maybe borrow, I don't know what the right word is, to get this presentation aired to you, because this was actually exclusive content delivered only at the Aviante Connect conference to users and prospects of Aviante that got to go here to this session. However, it was one of the highest, if not the highest rated session at the entire conference. And it was an amazing lineup. But these two people presented how to sell staffing services, and the audience went nuts. The participation was great. The feedback was impressive. And when you look at the background that these two phenomenal people have, you'll understand why. So the people that are with me here today are Jon Rutten, who is actually the senior enterprise account executive with Aviante. He's been with Aviante a handful of years. Before that, he's actually led sales teams for some of the biggest name staffing agencies out there, and he's been in staffing a lot, selling staffing services with a whole lot of success, which is really why Aviante poached him away, so they could basically get someone that understands the industry to drive that level of growth for them. And he's been killing it. We also have his counterpart, which I didn't get a chance to actually see you present this information, Erika, but this is actually Erika Kubitschek, which affectionately everyone calls Kubes. So you'll probably hear me say that, but she is with Aviante. She's a little bit newer than Jon, but she also comes from staffing. She actually worked for nearly a decade for a pretty solid footprint, family-owned company, servicing a multitude of industries. So she has a lot of knowledge about staffing and how to actually sell staffing services that you really need to pay attention to. And the overall key points, and they're going to get into this, but the overall key points that you're going to hear today is they're going to talk about outreach, right? They're going to talk about what are the ways that you need to be thinking about reaching out to your prospects. What are the appropriate sales cadences that you need to be interjecting into your process to be effective? And then really the big one is, how do you differentiate yourself from the competition, which is always, that really is the big one, because I think most agencies really struggle with that, being in a service industry. But so I am stoked to have Jon and Erika here with us today presenting this. So Jon, I'm going to kick it over to you to take it away, but thank you all for just being here and digging into this information.
Yeah, Dan, thanks very much for the extremely warm introduction. You're right, Erika here is like my better half. So just to back up a little bit, yeah, I'm Jon with Aviante. I support all of our large enterprise engagements for North America. And prior to joining the software side of the house, I did a bunch of years out here in the Pacific Northwest, supporting the teams on the West Coast on the agency side of the house. So a lot of global staffing firms on sites, branch network, and yeah, we were pretty successful at selling staffing services. And it's interesting how much has changed since I was out there carrying a bag, selling staffing services, but how much has also not changed. And really, Erika, I'll toss it over to you, but this whole presentation was born out of a conversation I had at Staffing Law a couple years ago. It was right during the peak of COVID. One of the really dynamic leaders that I respect in the space approached me and is like, hey, I really feel like my team has lost half a step through COVID. Like, it's just been a really challenging year. I know you had some success selling staffing services. Would you come out and talk to the team? And so we gathered up a lot of the stuff that we did when we were successful carrying the bag, and a lot of the stuff that we've heard since then is kind of a voice of the market, because all Kubes and I do all day every day is talk to staffing firms. And so we hear what's the pain, what's working, how have things shifted. And so as our Connect conference rolled around, we decided to really give back. Most, I think, sessions at any software conference are probably, the focus is on the software.
Yeah.
Our presentation was really not about Aviante, and 100% about how can we invest in those leaders that took time away from their business to come to Connect, so that they could have something to go back to their team with when they get asked, hey, we've been sitting here running the branch without you. What do we get out of this 3-day gap that you had? And so we've heard a lot of really, really good feedback to your point. We both probably have imposter syndrome. We don't know why anybody would want to listen to us, but they did, and the scores were really good, and the feedback's been really great. We've been brought in actually a couple times to kind of co-present on some of these differentiating topics and do some of the sales kickoffs for other staffing teams. So it's been a really fun sort of just side kind of passion project of Eric and I as a way of giving back, because we really love salespeople, and I think we're both the happiest when the people around us are performing and doing well, and that includes our clients, obviously, and our colleagues and our peers. So, Koobs, did I get all that right? Is that directionally correct?
Spot on. Yep. 100% spot on. Dan, first off, thank you so much for the amazing introduction. And to John's point, doing this session this year at Connect was just extremely special because we just wanted to, really kind of talk about some of the topics and, some of the changes that have been happening specifically this year within the market. Everyone's kind of back to kind of pre-COVID times where you're out there trying to, bring in some of that new business. And so it's how can we share some successful strategies with our customers. So super excited to be here today and share this with everybody. So.
And Dan, you
Love it.
sold some staffing services in your day.
Yeah, I've gotten a contract or two under my belt.
Some of this must have resonated with you a little bit, and I'll start to share my screen here. But again, thank you so much for having us on. I think that some of the stuff that that surprised me the most was how quickly the game has changed this year. Even when you think about some of the form field emails that we get that are mass soliciting business that we're all sick of opening. When you think about some of the subject line tactics and emails to get your attention, like there's a lot of blocking and tackling stuff that has not changed, but some of the tried and true methods, I think, of what these SaaS platforms that support cadences are doing, it's sort of ran its course. And so we have a lot of people that are circling back to what are some of the basics of like building rapport quickly, getting people to open up. And so that's kind of what this presentation is all about. We're going to go through today, guys. This is what we presented at our conference. So it's taking a little bit of a different spin to do it here virtually over, a screen, but we are going to go through some of the things that worked well for us by way of outreach. And some of this, if you guys have been exposed to like Sandler sales or Power Dynamics, a lot of these things may sound a little bit familiar in their DNA. Dan's nodding his head.
Yeah.
This presentation has never been better than when I've done it in tandem with Erika. She's going to take over and do sales cadences, and then we're going to wrap with some examples of differentiating from the competition. And some of that does get into some of the mobile strategy and the things that Aviante supports, but it's all very agnostic to whatever ATS you're on, whatever type of staffing services you're selling. If you're going out that day to close a new perm order, or you're trying to respond to an RFP for enterprise business. We sometimes Eric and I would skip over the slide of why we are here and how much we've actually sold when we did have this as our responsibility. And again, I was only successful because of the team around me. In enterprise sales, it's more about bringing in the people internally to get the deal across the finish line, as well as taking that rapport that you built with the client and then transferring that rapport to your organization. That's really all that I do. Erica goes out and gets people to follow.
I'm in the trenches.
Yeah, exactly. So we feel like we've covered both ends of the spectrum here of the type of sales. But Dan, is any of this resonating with you as far as like what our mission is here today?
It does. And I love it because I hate to say it when I go to conferences and I see events, webinars, for the most part, the salesperson is usually the most overlooked. And I know that this is a recruiter-driven industry, but anytime I can be a part of anything that shows some love to the salespeople out there carrying the bag in the trenches, dealing with the rejection at massive levels, I appreciate it. So I'm glad that you all are here showing some love.
I couldn't agree more. We've always had selling as a component of our responsibility in our roles, but I haven't been an individual producer in 20 years until I, joined Aviante. And it's interesting how overlooked the salespeople are and how tough it really is out there. So this is a little bit of the topics I'm going to cover here. Just like basic and blocking and tackling, phone calls and emails, your 30-second commercial, and I'll go through all these one by one. But when we actually back up, when I when I reach out to CEOs, which I do every single day, I'm typically cold calling their cell phone, and I'm using tools like Zoom Info to get that information. And then I'm immediately following it up with an email. And that says like, hey, hey, just left you a voicemail. And it's typically that email is a verbatim transcript of what I would say live in my 30-second commercial. And it was so fascinating when we were in that room at Connect to ask those staffing owners, how many of you guys could describe your business and your differentiating and your secret sauce you're offering in 30 seconds or less?
How many is that? How many is
What
that?
was that?
How many?
Dan,
How
you
many
want to
people?
go? You want to do yours now?
No.
No, nobody does. And in fact, the audience immediately threw it back on me to do mine.
Yep.
And ours has evolved too. You know, Eric and I were just practicing the other day. When you think about everything that Aviante does, front office, ATS, CRM, back office, invoicing, payroll, mobile strategy, business intelligence, simple VMS, like it's a lot to cover.
It changes all the time.
And so we would go through in the room and we would practice doing that out loud. There is no substitute for that that uncomfortable role play. You practice how you play. And so we really encourage those those leaders of salespeople, whether they're comfortable or not, to get out of that box and say these things out loud. And I really use the example of getting stuck in the elevator with your CEO. You know, if Rishabh and I were trapped and he's like, hey, John, how's it going? He doesn't want to know that my tummy hurts and I'm, feeling okay. He wants to know, hey, these are the things we're working on. This is how we're doing them. This is when we're going to get them done. And this is when you can expect what kind of results. And that's what we mean about like compartmentalizing that 30-second commercial.
Yeah. And that's key. And I love that you're hitting it, because that's one of the biggest things. People underestimate the power of the 30-second commercial and the power of practicing, refining it, delivering it, testing it, getting feedback in real time, and keeping that process going. But the thing that I always say about the 30-second commercial that I love is that it is the best answer to what is it that you do. Like if you're at a networking event and someone's like, oh, what do you do? The 30-second commercial that's the answer, right?
Yeah.
If you're out with friends or wherever, like, hey, well, what do you do? Oh, this is literally your best branding message you can possibly have. So I love that you're hitting on it. And I love the throwback to Sandler.
And it's okay to set yourself apart by having this dialed in. Like this is same thing with the email follow-up. Like most salespeople are not amazing at follow-up. That is why we have automated cadences to do that step for us. But when you can consistently do that outreach at the C-suite, make it really tight and make a really great first impression. I can't tell you the number of CEOs that I've talked to that have been like, actually, we're kind of locked into our software decision here for another 2 years. But can I just ask, how did you get my number? This is great. I wish my sales guys would do this. So I know it resonates with buyers at the C-suite level, and I'm super beholden to doing the analog voicemail, because once upon a time, the first on-site we ever closed was Leatherman Tools when I was in staffing. That was the first thing I ever sold, and it was the result of a returned voicemail. And so because of that experience, I'll never get away from that tactic. Some of these other boxes that we're touching on here, create a burning platform. I think a lot of people, when they're first doing their outreach, it's kind of like, hey, if you're open to evaluating, I'd love to be a part of that conversation. That's okay. But what's better is to create that cost of delay.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by burning platform. Like you have to find those levers that person is going to resonate with, even if they were part of that buying decision to go with the staffing program that isn't working out. It's very difficult for somebody who was part of that decision to choose the incumbent that is not performing when it comes to staffing services, to then share with a stranger, gosh, that decision I made is really backfiring. And so you've got to lean into that sort of like emotional side of their brain. We want people making decisions from that emotional side of like, pain, delay, frustration. Those are great areas to lean in on. And so when I say things like get emotional, I'm talking about like you want to take that emotional word, but you do want to tie it to a business reason.
Yeah.
So saying things like, are you frustrated, worried, concerned about, and then tying that to, Are you frustrated about your overtime spend? Are you worried about turnover? Are you concerned about the quality of your staffing service program? So, and then again, going back to Sandler, using that reverse negative, none of that resonates with you, does it? Because if it does, I'd be happy to spend some time to show you where we solve for those things.
Yeah. And John, can I jump in and highlight one thing? Because you really hit on it nicely, but I think it's worth emphasizing is the cost of delay. I do a workshop, basically say COI, not ROI, which is cost of inactivity or cost of inaction versus return on investment. This is a funny thing. People are 10 times more motivated by what they stand to lose than they stand to gain. They're more motivated by pain than pleasure, right? Like that's just the nature of it. And it's the foundation of Sandler sales. I like that you highlight this because if you try to sell all of this stuff and then you try to justify it with a return on an investment, return is pleasure in the future, right?
Exactly.
Cost of delay or cost of inactivity is pain in the present. So that's why I love that you put create a burning platform in there, because psychologically people are going to be more likely to take action quicker if they realize the cost of delay is significant because they want to avoid that.
Totally.
Yep.
So,
and that, and when you think about, it's kind of like using the old FUD, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but using it in a positive way. So you're not trying to, it's not a scare tactic, but there are real emotional, scary things happening when you can't start a line because your staffing program isn't delivering the people that you need, or you're having compliance issues on the back end because of California meal rest break periods, whatever. There's always something that people are going to be able to lean in on that's keeping them up at night. And if you can kind of wedge your pitch in there, you're going to be very well served. The last thing I'll talk about on this slide before I throw it over to you, Kub, is kind of that pattern interruption. And all I mean by that is just be genuine. Especially when you hire a new salesperson, there's always this like anticipation of like, how do I become a salesperson? Well, actually, being yourself is what's going to make you the most successful in the seat. For example, I could never do great at trying to sound like Dan Boring. Like, there's just no way. Dan couldn't do great at trying to sound like Jon Rutten. You have to take these tips and like just, I guess, make them your own genuine self, work them into what works for you. And when I say things like pattern interruption, all I'm saying is say things they don't expect you to say. When I used to introduce myself on the phone, I'd be like, hi, this is Jon Rutten, regional vice president of XYZ. You've probably never heard of me. When people and people would always pause and laugh, that would set them at ease. Like, okay, he's got this title, but like he clearly doesn't think it's that big a deal. When people would say like, hey, now's not a great time, we can't connect right now, I would always say, I could totally respect that, but in my experience, if we hang up right now, we'll probably never talk again. And so when you say those things that they don't expect salespeople today, it just jolts them out of that like expected mode of what they expect of salespeople. I would even say things like, we're thinking of adding a new client in your space. I've taken a look at your website, your core values really align with ours, and we're thinking that you might be a good fit for us. That turns the conversation totally on its head, and you wouldn't think it works, but I have some really clear examples where saying the opposite of what they expect has paid tons of dividends. And this also applies to email. Things like, I can't think how many emails I've received where it starts out with some sort of apology, like, I'm sorry that I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry I'm reaching out. Like, never apologize in your emails for doing your outreach. You're saving them from something that they don't know. It's a world beyond what they have today, and you're just trying to get a hold of them to explain what that world looks like. So those are some of the examples of kind of pattern interruption. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that you said never apologize for your outreach, because if you apologize for your outreach, you're basically setting the tone that you view yourself as a burden, and the information that you're about to share with the prospect is burdensome. And that's what you're telling them, right? And if you don't, and if you got to get in the right mindset as a successful salesperson, you got to be evangelical, right? You basically got to be like, I've got the best information there is, and I've got to tell it to everybody because I've got to help all the good companies out there hire good people, right? And you should never apologize for that. If you've got really good service, really good people, and you can help businesses and help candidates, never apologize. You should be proud to tell everybody that. And if you, as soon as you apologize, you basically are saying, hey, I'm a burden, please forgive my existence. And if they forgive your existence, they're going to forget your existence. So
I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, they people start to see us as a commodity, right? You know, a 50-pound sack of beans is a 50-pound sack of beans. A staffing service is a staffing service, and we'll get into that differentiating here at the end, and how you can, you know, stand out as not just a commodity. But Erica, do you mind? Coops,
And
you mind running us through?
before she jumps over, I want to say,
Yeah.
like, everything you just said is going to be setting up differentiation throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
So differentiation isn't just the answer to why are you different from your competitors. It's literally how you do everything differently, like the pattern interrupt, your outreach, not apologizing. All of that stuff is literally a differentiator. So
The whole goal is to position yourself as more than just a salesperson. Ideally, especially in the enterprise space, you know, you're positioning yourself as a consultant that is there to make sure that all the scary boxes are not left unchecked. And
yeah.
if you can set yourself up with that sort of a profile in a prospect's mind, it just builds so much trust and rapport so quickly, and just sets the whole relationship on a different foot.
I was just about to say that exact same thing. And also too, it's like you should never apologize either, because they also have a sales team too
Yeah,
out there
I get
doing the
it.
exact same thing. So 100% spot on.
Truth.
Yep. So this is a part that I'm actually pretty passionate about. As we kind of mentioned before, I've been doing sales now for 13 years, almost a decade of which we're actually at a staffing firm out there in the trenches, consistently prospecting, not only hunting, but also farming too. So pretty passionate, just kind of talking about a sales cadence, essentially what it is and how to do it right. I mean, every single day I talk to sales reps, executives, and I get a pretty interesting mix of responses when I just kind of, ask how many people out there are actively doing and managing a successful sales cadence versus how many out there kind of have a program and it needs a little bit of TLC. And there's also a lot of companies, sales reps out there who don't know what a sales cadence is. And so I just always
Wait, can I jump in here real quick, Erica, too?
Yep,
Dan,
go
does
right ahead.
that we jokingly put it down as a third have sales cadences and manage them, a third know what they are
Yep.
and like to implement them, and a third have no idea what a sales cadence is. And we thought we were being generous, so you're smiling already.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you at all in your consultative business?
It does. It really does. It's amazing to me how few cadences there actually are. And that's, if you look at, I think this is why sales performance overall is actually such a small conversion number, because like there's enough data out there that shows that it takes between 7 and 12 meaningful touches and connections before someone will actually even start to pay attention to you. Yet the average salesperson gives up before 4. And I think the reason they give up before 4 is because there's no leadership in that company building out meaningful cadences that are going to actually have them sticking with that, hitting that sweet spot 7 to 12 or whatever. So I think you're spot on. I see it, unfortunately, on the regular.
Well, and our hope was, and you can see at the
all the
problem
time.
at the bottom here, I got 99 problems, but my pitch ain't one. So we figured if we can get our 30-second commercial dialed in, you can plug it into some sort of a system, then you're off to the races. And Coop, is this the right slide for you at this point?
Yeah, actually, let's go back one slide,
Okay.
because to Dan's point, Dan, you actually stole the words right from my
Sorry,
mouth.
Coop.
It's just,
No, it's great.
no, but hey, it's great minds think alike, right? So, I mean, in sales, planning is everything, right? And it's, not only planning, but doing everything that you can to really kind of consistently keep that pipeline full. And, as you know, sales reps, sometimes we don't have the best follow-up plans. Sometimes it's once a day, once a month, on a Friday, on like a Tuesday. Some of us really have a hard time with that consistency, and it's actually that inconsistency that really slows down that sales process and lets a lot of those opportunities really kind of slip through the cracks. I have plenty of horror stories about those myself that we can always share here for a different date. But I was just about to say that research actually shows that your prospects need to hear from you an average of 7 times before they actually decide to pick up the phone, call you back. And so, and it's just that they don't want to not talk to you, but they get hundreds of phone calls, outreach every single day. So chances are that they're just busy, and your outreach is just kind of, also potentially ending up in their junk mails.
Yeah.
So the key to the cadence is, you know, having that consistent follow-up so you do get a response back to them. So yeah, we'll kind of talk just a little bit more about, you know, why do you ultimately need a sales cadence, how to track and measure, and what are some good examples of one. So John, you can go ahead and jump right to that next slide.
Even that Leatherman Tools example, that when I had reached out, when I finally got a hold of them, they had already down selected from 8 vendors to 4. They were in the middle of an RFP process, and if I hadn't have been hounding them, I wouldn't have inserted myself, you know, at midstream. And again, that was when I was new to the role. I was afraid to pick up the phone because I thought, gosh, if I get a C-suite decision maker on, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't know anything about staffing. And then I had this epiphany. My competition is not waiting to pick up the phone. I better just start putting myself out there. And
That's right.
And thank goodness we did.
Well, and with sales too, right? It's sometimes about being at the right place at the right time, and that's what's going to happen too if you actually do, you know, a successful sales cadence. So, you know, ultimately with a sales cadence, right? It's just creating those sequences of touch points so you can really establish a connection with your prospect, right? As you go through that initial cadence, you know, ultimately if you don't get a response from them, that's when you kind of make that decision, is now not the time, or you kind of, you know, do once a month, 6 months outreach from there. So really the whole idea is to diversify that outreach across multiple channels, because you don't know what specific prospect likes what. Do they like a phone call, a text message, an email, LinkedIn request? I'm a little bit old school where I'm a firm believer of an in-person visit. So, you know, by creating that schedule of specific outreach, it kind of really takes out the guesswork as to when you should follow up with your prospect too, and really creating that consistent outreach. Plus, you know, if you run a successful cadence with the appropriate tech stack, all of that information is logged into your CRM. Long are the days of that tribal knowledge. I've seen all that too well in
passing information down around the campfire, like
or a rep leaves and they take all of that information with them because they didn't put any of that information into a system. So I've seen it all too well.
And all that still happens too much today. I would love to have a sales focused demo here with Staffing Monthly or with, you know, Nisa, just covering the best practices of the Aviante CRM, because I feel like just by and far in this industry, there's not enough usage of CRMs to really manage the cadence, have that structured framework that you talked about. So I think that would be a great follow-on session to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. And so the goal of the sales cadence, right, is, you know, ultimately to close more of those deals in a shorter period of time. So it's a win-win for everybody. You want to jump to the next slide, John? Can
I ask a question on that one, Erika? And you don't need to change slides, John, it's fine. So you said obviously the ultimate goal. What's your approach like teaching the salesperson like the micro goal of each step, right? Because like when they're making their very first cold call, or maybe they're leaving a voicemail or not, or they're sending out an email, like, or a LinkedIn message, like the goal isn't to close a deal with that micro interaction. Like, do you ever take time to like teach your salespeople the goal of each little step so they can know if it's a pass fail at the micro level before getting to that ultimate goal of getting a new customer?
Yeah, I mean, you need to really take the time, listen to your customer, right? Understand what they want, and ultimately how you can provide a solution for them. Because there's a lot of times where every customer is not going to be the best fit for you, nor you may be the best fit for them. So it's all about understanding who they are, what they're looking to solve. Will your services match what they're looking for? And then just kind of really taking the time to build a relationship with them, because even if it's not a good fit now, doesn't mean it's not going to be a good fit in a year, 2 years, or 3 years. So it's, you know, ultimately to really kind of slowing down and listening. A good sales rep should always listen to what their prospects are saying. Firm believer of you should only talk 30%, they should talk the other 70%. So John,
I
do
don't,
any?
I don't think we do a great job of that, Dan, at all. And I think when we do, not only does it help them tactically with what their goal is for that one step, but it also creates some like, so almost like an artificial finish line. Like, hey, you did this, now that's done. We don't do that with salespeople enough at the end of the month, and so or at the micro step, like, and so without that like finish line, it just feels like you're constantly on this never-ending hamster wheel of like, I just keep going and going and going. And if you can drill down into like, hey, you've hit the goal for this step, like you booked a discovery call, you made X amount of dials. We know that activity will lead to results. Like whatever that artificial finish line is on that step, I think it's important.
And I like defining it. I like teaching people, hey, when you're making a cold call, it is incredibly unlikely that you're going to close a deal on that call. And it's, I know the end goal is to get a customer, to get a good customer that's qualified. But ultimately, when you're making a call, you know, a cold call or even an email or whatever, like the goal really is to get enough information to move the process forward, or to schedule a meeting, or to find out they're not qualified. Like any one of those things is an acceptable goal.
Yeah, I'll take it all.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, and I like to teach that because that way they know what they're shooting for. Hey, when I'm sending this email out, I got to write it in a way not to get them to sign a document as a new client, but just to either get a meeting or get more information, or just to get to the no quicker, right? And as long as they know that's the intent of that step, I think it guides them better in that step versus overreaching and basically maybe premature presentation and turning people away because now you sound like the ShamWow guy, right? That's my
advancing the ball in any stripe is approved.
That's the goal. Yep. Spot on, 100%. Just wanted to kind of take some time just to talk a little bit more about some best practices around that cadence. You know, as you know, right, you just need to understand who you're speaking to, exactly what we just said. You know, it's will it based off of your target market, region, service. Yes, you just need to take the time to do the research to really understand who your potential customer is, what's their pain, and ultimately how you can solve that for them. As John said, what is your 30-second commercial? You need to know that. You need to understand that. Really kind of seeing how it does take, you know, that contact with a prospect up to 7 times. Your ideal cadence should be around anywhere around that 10 touch points. You always want to space them out a day or two. You never really want to stalk anyone and you know, touch or do a phone call, an email, and a text all on the same day. And step one, that might be a little bit too much, but I'm a firm believer of making a phone call and then sending out that first email day one, right? Just, you know, hey Bob, I reached out, just wanted to introduce myself. I left you a voice message. So also too, the email content should catch your prospect's attention. It must be informative, intriguing, something that relates to their pain. It must look good, and keep it simple. All too many times I have gotten so many sales outreaches where like the font's horrible, it's 4 paragraphs long, and I don't have the attention to even spend the time on it. So just have it be short, sweet, simple, and to the point.
100%. So a couple questions on that one. So is the phone call and the email, is that your go-to lead off to start a campaign or start a cadence?
We even have an example here if you want to see kind of the.
Yep, this is thank you, John. I think that first step should always just be a phone call, followed up by an email referring to the phone call, right? And then next step, day 2, LinkedIn connection. I mean, this is just a really good example of what I've used in the past and what I've seen a lot of successful sales reps use.
And considering our target audience, Dan, where we had folks that were like a third have no idea what a cadence even is. A third would like to implement it but haven't for whatever business reason. So do you have a philosophy on that first step?
Yeah.
It's different than what we're showing? Because is there a question behind the question?
So no, I'm always curious. So like I've actually a lot of my campaigns. So I have a number of templates for 30-day campaigns like this. I also run rolling 12-week campaigns that kind of spread the frequency and intensity out to maximize the window of potential needing of your services. But usually a call and a voicemail is a good lead off. Sometimes, believe it or not, sometimes I'll mix it up. One of my templates for a 30-day campaign actually starts off with an old-fashioned letter. And I've actually got teams of people that are getting traction out of that old fashioned letter now.
I've been doing the same thing, Dan. We call it account-based marketing. So our marketing team obviously handles the broad outreach in the enterprise space, and then everything we do is personalized. And I think the letter is great. Or even flipping it around and doing the email first, and then saying, hey, I'm about to call you in just a few minutes. This is going to be the nature of my voicemail. This is what I'm reaching out about. Just to keep it fresh, even for the individual producer.
Yeah, but I definitely like this layout here. And one shout out that I'd be remiss if I didn't say is obviously, AI and ChatGPT was a big theme of Connect.
Let it be your friend.
And it is, to Erika's point, your emails, two keys here. Your subject line, think of it as like your tweet. Like this is your headline. Like this is what is going to get people to click to open, right? So be very to the point on this one. The best data right now shows 7 to 9, words in the subject line. If you can incorporate their name or their company name, that's going to increase openability, if you will. But feel free to use ChatGPT to come up with a great just email subject line that fits within that parameter. And then to your point, Erika, about the length of email, more than 70% of people are reading their emails on their phones now. So I highly recommend, if you want to check this, draft your email up, send it to yourself, open it on your mobile device. And if you actually have to scroll, like you're scrolling through the gram to get to the bottom of your email, it's too long.
You failed. Yep.
So that's the,
I only sentences broken apart as if they're paragraphs for mobile optimization is critical.
So true.
Nope, I agree.
Erika, anything more you want to touch on this in closing?
One thing just to also touch on too, right? I mean, you constantly have to retry things. Try it a first time, really kind of say, what was my response? If it didn't work, always switch it up, right? You can't constantly redo the same things and expect different results. So that's my last thing that I have. And Jon, I'll pass the mic over to you.
I agree on that point right there. One tracking tool that I have, and it's old school, it's in Excel, is that
shame on you.
Once you
get that in the CRM.
I know, but you'll hear. But once you hear what I'm about to say, if you can show me that Aviante does this,
okay, you got it.
I'm going to sign on the dotted line, right? So, but this is what it is. Like once I build my cadence out, I'll actually track the close points at each stage. And then I'll literally be like, okay, I'll see how long a cadence is taking me. Let's say, am I in that 7 to 12 range? But I also look to see how often a certain technique that's in the cadence is actually closing above and beyond anything else. So if I see a particular email hitting, and let's say it's an email later in the cadence, I might try to move it up earlier in the cadence earlier on, right? Like I'll look at stuff like that to see the efficacy of each cadence touch point on that one. So I actually measure each touch point against each other. And it's a little bit easier for me to tabulate the data in Excel because I see the world in rows and columns. So
I think anything you're doing that's around intentionality behind your results is great. And obviously that's, a 401 level class that you're doing with your pivot tables. I know we're getting close on time. This was our last section. This differentiating from your competition was actually born out of, again, another just sort of grassroots conversation I was having with some of my former colleagues from Adecco and Randstad had ended up in leadership roles and national sales roles, regional sales roles with other staffing firms. We all tend to move around. And so they had realized I was at Aviante and they asked, hey, I'm now an Aviante client. I'm going in to pitch this large Fortune 100 RFP response. Would you come in and take 20 minutes of my hour and a half of my presentation just to talk about tech and how we differentiate by using Aviante? And this was actually pre-work and acquisition when these conversations started happening. So back then we would lean on things like the talent journey. How is that impacted? When we think about that sort of commoditization, it doesn't matter if it's a decision maker who's got 3 temps or a decision maker who has 3,000. They're getting a lot of calls. They've probably been in the HR recruiting space for a while. They've had relationships with multiple staffing firms and seen the evolution, and they truly want to know how is your fishing pole better? You guys are all sifting from the same zip codes, the same skill sets, the same kind of people. How are you not a commodity? And so we were able to come in and we were actually 2 for 3 on presentations where we had been brought in to kind of co-sell. And then you have the whole mobile piece that started to accelerate that consumerization of staffing. And what I mean by that is when you order something off of Amazon, it's extremely easy. It takes zero amount of time. We always say that we value the workers, but if we really valued the contractors, we would also value their time. And so at Aviante, for example, we're trying to make it as easy it is to buy something off of Amazon as it is to accept a position. And so being able to demonstrate that through the mobile piece is pretty impactful. I'm going to skip ahead a couple of slides here just to show you this. When these are just some examples of websites that are out there, when you think of, and this is their homepage, this is just a screenshot. When you think of all the things that they could spend their valuable marketing dollars on to get the most amount of ROI out of their spend, the number one thing that these firms were leading with is mobile. And what's very cool about this is that happens to be our app. But even if it wasn't, it just goes to show you how impactful that mobile journey is to impacting the talent experience. And so when you can talk about those types of things, again, whether it's your mobile app or whether it's your candidate portal or your high touch, special sauce that makes your firm unique, those are the things that you want to bring out. When I was selling staffing services, I was no exception. I had one little PowerPoint slide that used to be an animated GIF of our chatbot talking to a worker about a forklift experience, and he starts talking about being a smoker mid sentence, and that little animated GIF turned so many heads in boardrooms when we were responding to RFPs, because like, wow, that's different. That makes me sit up. My other Mickey Mouse tool was, I should say Mickey Mouse, but it was basically just a voicemail. It was called Harken, and it would do after-hour screening of call center candidates for second and third shift, which was amazing because the branch closes at 5:30. You'd be able to come back in the morning. Your calendar was filled up from the chatbot. You had all these interviews to go through, and prospects that were buying staffing services could very tangibly wrap their head around that piece. So I've been kind of going for a minute here, but Dan, does that differentiating through tech make sense, whether regardless of example?
100%. And this is one that, and I gushed over Rishabh's talk at Connect, and I was like, if you can just give me that slide deck and I can modify it slightly, like that should really be the talk track for differentiation for staffing agencies that are Aviante customers, because what you're building with the end-to-end platform with Aviante, and this is, I don't mean this to be a commercial for Aviante, but this is just answers your question. But you're also integrating mobile first, which is where the industry is going. It's where the candidate is going. It makes the journey better. You're pulling in simple VMS to actually show some love to the client and give them a compliance tool and a unification tool that kind of it basically directly connects to the process, which is huge. But when I hear a lot of agencies give their 30-second commercial, it tends to talk about things like we have access to all the same job boards, we have great recruiters, we have great customer service, all those things. And savvy companies, like the really good clients that actually look to partner with staffing agencies as an extension of their contingent management plan, right? Mm-hmm. This is what they're thinking. Yes, they like leveraging your resources, but they also want to leverage your technology suite. They want to know that they're going to be getting tools and processes that are going to enhance their recruiting efforts to bring in a stronger pipeline. And technology is where that lives these days. And if you can actually demonstrate your stack and say, hey, where do you think most of the candidates are going to go? To me, that's mobile first, that has all these things, the change card, I can pay, all this stuff. Like, you show them, like, just forget about any competition. Where do you think the candidates are going to choose to work through for an agency? This, with all of these tools, that's candidate focused, or this company that you can't even tell really what they're doing, right? And it's a no-brainer for the prospect at that point. So I love that you're including this in your differentiator.
And I think there's an even further, not spin to put on that, but another way that we would differentiate is we would think about everything you just said and think about a regional leader selling, whether they have the backing of a big global staffing firm or not. Both have the best story to tell. You can say things like, we have all these tools. We either have the tools of the big boys, or we have the backing of the bigs behind us back at corporate to give us access to all these tools. Yet our definition of customer service is defined here at the local level. You want to demonstrate that caring is a part of your DNA. And to be able to say that, yeah, we've got all these great tools, but guess what? We understand your business here because we're regional or because we're local. You can say those things regardless of whatever type of firm you work for. I just think that's another way of like taking the tool stuff, which is great, and they need to see it, and then bringing it back down to, but yet we're here, we're local, we understand you.
Yeah.
If that makes
Love
any
it.
sense. And there's other ways to align with the prospect. That's another one I put on there. I mentioned it earlier, you know, their mission statement from their website is very similar to our firm's mission statement. That type of caring as a part of your DNA can really resonate with people, and is, again, not something they expect salespeople to be talking about founding values and alignment on that level, that non-surface level. Even things like, you know, skill marketing candidates, or even trying to expand an existing relationship where they think of you for light industrial all day long and filling those roles, but they would never think of you for an engineer or an interim CFO. But being cognizant of those openings, and then just approaching the client like, hey, I saw you had this open rec on your website for over 30 days. I felt like I'd be doing a disservice not to put this person in front of you. You know, those are, Dan, you're smiling. What thoughts on that one?
I just love it because it's also using the negative reverse, and it's basically being evangelical. It's basically saying, hey, I can only stand by so long and let you do this to yourself before I can step in and offer some help. You know, like I love it. That's why I just love the approach.
And I think, yeah, so the other thing too is, you know, and I don't remember exactly where this fit in, Koo, but they've got to learn this stuff from somewhere. And not everybody has a Dan Mori, you know, in their organization that they can tap into for this kind of training. But I can tell you, I didn't have one and I don't think Erika did, although she had Dan Kimmel, never mind. But my point being,
Shout out to Dan Kimmel.
yeah, shout out Kimmel Yoda. When I got first taken out by my SVP, when I had moved, this was even before staffing, moved into that regional leader role, and we went out for a day of sales. I used the things that he said that day for years as part of my process. And so when we closed this out, we really wanted to challenge the people that had come to the breakout session to go back and spend this time with your people. There is literally no better substitute. And so it wasn't just about directly building confidence in those salespeople. It was also about building the confidence of the people that were in the room with us that didn't necessarily carry a bag, but they were responsible for that sales leadership within their organization to go back and be willing to invest in them. Because like I opened up this call with, we all have imposter syndrome too. We don't know why anybody would want to listen to us. And I think a lot of the people in that room who ran a lot of revenue and staffing also just needed that kind of confidence boost to go back and be like, they really need to hear from you. They would love that quality time.
And I basically echo what you said, like that not a lot of organizations don't have this type of content, these type of leaders that can actually like pour into, you know, the junior salespeople, the trainees, that kind of stuff. And that's why, you know, going to a conference like Connect, I mean, it was huge. Like your speaker lineup wasn't all just about the new bells and whistles of Aviante. Like, yeah, that stuff was really cool and it's fun to see, but you had so many breakout workshops that actually focus on just helping your customers get better. Like that's meaningful, you know, and the fact that you and Erika are here now, and it's not just for this group, it's for you guys do this for your customers. Like you will literally get in the trenches and help your customers learn.
We love it.
And that's just a core value of Aviante that I appreciate. And if I can, you know, a couple just shameless plugs for me, that's if you're watching this and you're a national, you know, nationally independently owned staffing agency, like NISA is a great association, and we're focused on training and development to get these sort of resources out to you. And we've got our leadership conference coming up next week. And this is a kind of spoiler alert. We are putting together the Staffing Sales Summit early next year. That's going to be a conference purely dedicated to selling. That's it. Recruiters, go somewhere else. Salespeople, this is where you belong. Every session is for you. So Staffing Sales Summit's going to be coming out early 2024. So yeah, we're bringing these resources to you. But anyway, that was my plug. Awesome. So take it back away.
Just in closing, I mean, yeah, obviously caring is a part of our DNA. If you want to make yourself feel better, the fastest way to do it is to do something for somebody else. So it is really tough out there. Like I said at the start, you know, the sales outreach piece has changed even in just 9 months this year, and it will continue to change. But I think things like my personal belief is that pattern interruption, the differentiating, the being intentional and tight about what you say, that so you can build rapport quickly with somebody who was part of that decision that's now causing pain, like that stuff's never going to change. And if you can, and for a lot of salespeople, this is just Dumbo and his magic feather stuff. This is just them, giving them the confidence that they can fly, but they could have flown the whole time without any of this. So whatever resonates with you, hopefully this is like any leadership book that you've read or business book or relationship book. There's chapters you love. There's chapters you could do without. If you grab anything out of this that helps you make one more dial or one more call or one more bit of outreach or tighten up that presentation, then Eric and I have done our job. So thank you so much for having us on.
My pleasure. Any parting shot there, Erica?
I think, Jon, you said it perfectly. Yeah, we're just super excited about this, very passionate about it, and thank you so much again for having us on.
Well, I love it. I know that when I'm at Connect next year, I'm going to ask them not to schedule me at the same time as you, so I can actually sit into your session and hear it firsthand.
Heckle us throughout, I'm sure.
So this whole
again.
everyone watching this, literally, you're just the benefactor of me. I just wanted to see them present this. That was it. This is all for me, but y'all get to share in the benefit of this too, because this was really good stuff. So Jon, Eric, I grateful for you. Glad to have you here on Staffing Monthly, sharing your wisdom and knowledge, and I wish nothing but the best for you all.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.